Tonight isn't about Paul Goodwin. It's about justice for Joan Crotts, a 63-year-old woman, a daughter, a wife, a mother of 4 children, a grandmother of 6 children. She loved her family deeply, and she would go to any length to help her children or her grandchildren. Tonight will not bring any closure for me. It will never erase the horror inflicted on our family. It is like an old injury that seems to get better, but when bump comes back with a vengeance. It cannot bring back a grandmother that Austin will never know except through the stories told by those who know her. It cannot erase the memories of having to clean up your mother's murder scene. I will always wonder what Mom was thinking as she stood by that back door refusing to go downstairs because she knew whatever horrors Paul had already inflicted on her paled in comparison to what Paul had in mind for her down there. On my mom's last day on earth, she laid on the basement floor for 8 hours in unimaginable agony, with numerous broken bones, a fractured skull, black eyes, split lips, battered, bruised, bloody, raped, and discarded. I couldn't even view her body because I was told the damage that Paul had inflicted was so great I didn't want to remember that way. Paul has stolen so much from this family, but after tonight, I promise that not one more minute of my time will be wasted on him. He has taken all he's ever going to take from us, and I will try never to mention him again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deborah, would you like to go next?
Very short statement. The only thing that Paul Goodwin's execution proves is that he committed a horrible crime and had to pay for it. If it were not for 2 friends that lived down the street, I would not have found my mom alive. Only God knows the memories I have of that day, and only He can wipe them away. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Robert, do you need to move any microphones? Robert, be patient. They're just going to move those microphones.
I'm here tonight to be a voice for my mother, Joan Crotts, and to speak on behalf of my 3 siblings, her grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, those present tonight and those who could not be here. We're making this statement to honor our mother, grandmother, because if the roles were reversed, she would be standing here speaking to you now on behalf of any one of her family members. Unfortunately, all too often it seems as if the media focuses on Paul Goodwin, and at most my mother is identified just as his victim. But she was not his, she was ours. And before she was a murder victim, she was our mother and our grandmother. She was a woman who had the courage, the strength, the tenacity, and the determination to fight for her life until she could provide police with enough information to apprehend her killer, Paul Goodwin. These attributes, however, were not unique to that day, and in fact, they were present every day of her life. She came from a long line of willful and pleasantly ornery German women, and even more strongly than her own mother, she undeniably possessed the good type of hard-headed stubbornness that you would leave you shaking your head, but it only served to endear you that much more to her. She was the exact kind of stubborn, resilient, strong woman that you were thankful was your mother and your family's life to be a role model for your sister, wife, daughter, nieces, and granddaughters. She doted on her grandchildren, not only spoiling them, but also sharing her love of travel with them, taking her oldest son, my son Robert, on a memorial trip to North Carolina to visit her son and his uncle who had served in the Gulf War admirably. She was a dedicated pet parent and fiercely loved her dogs. She also took my daughter, Jessica, to Hawaii and spent a week with her in Hawaii. Her favorite color was purple, and she loved reading. She loved to watch the Blues hockey team and was an active member of her church. She inspired her daughter-in-law's passion for cooking, and her own specialties included carrot cake and lasagna. She left us all with cherished moments, whatever they would be, about pineapples, cheese logs, ice, and fog walk. They mean something special to us, and they'll not soon be forgotten. But they ultimately are the moments we share with one another to bring the smiles and laughter back to her memory when we can't shake the images of her death. Those images are just a small part of the grief that we share as a family. In the 16 years, 9 months, and 9 days since her murder, the fear, despair, anger, and emptiness felt by her family has been unimaginable, yet cannot even begin to compare to the fear and terror she must have felt when she first realized what was about to happen to her, and then when those thoughts became a reality as she was being murdered. In comparison, our words seem trite, but are needed for us to explain the profound loss we have all experienced. The impact of her murder never diminishes because the rest of our lives we have to live with the fact that our mother and grandmother suffered one of the most horrifying deaths possible. She never told her sons about the troubles with Paul for fear that we would get in trouble by confronting him about the situation. And all 4 of her children have endlessly and mercilessly punished themselves over what we could have done something, anything at all, to have prevented her murder. One of the most difficult impacts of my mother's murder was telling my family night after night that everything would be all right, when I didn't know if I could even believe it myself because I was too afraid to leave my family or children at home alone because of the nervousness, shaking that overcomes your body when you enter the basement of a dark house. You feel like you're in a constant state of fear because you relive that day over and over through flashbacks when you are awake and through nightmares when you are asleep. And it feels as if there will never be an escape. It is about feeling paralyzed and obsessing over that frozen moment as time as you remember exactly what you were doing, exactly what you were wearing, and every detail of the moment you found out as if it happened yesterday. It's still hearing the sound of her voice and smelling her perfume so vividly that you catch your breath when you realize that she's been gone for almost 17 years. The feelings are indescribable the first time you arrive at your childhood home, only to see cameras in the front yard and street, and your childhood memories cordoned off by police tape. The desperation is inexpressible as you feverishly scrub the blood and footprints off the floors, trying to wipe any piece of him out of the home, trying to take back the memories her and the memories of a happy life in that home. It is dumbfounding how a family home can be transformed into a crime scene in just seconds, with all the memories and moments that were lived there before seemingly so fleeting that you grasp onto them with all your might so you don't lose them in the horror of what is now surrounding you. So you pack up the home item by item, memory by memory, so that you can sell it because it tears you apart to stand inside of it. And you pretend that doing all this will help you move forward when of course you know that it won't. Then there are the holidays and celebrations that aren't never the same. The first few holidays you sit across from each other at the table, not knowing what to do or who should sit in the chair that she would have normally occupied. You know that her absence is the one thing on everyone's mind, but no one will speak out loud about it. And everyone pretends for each other's sake that everything is fine, despite being barely cognizant of the food in front of you and hardly waiting to finish. You go through the motions and create new traditions, trying to establish a sense of normalcy for your kids' sake and your sake. So you sit by the cold stone of her grave on her birthday and the first anniversary of those thereafter, so she is not alone. And even as you learn to try to celebrate the good times again, they are still tinged with sadness, as your son saves a seat adorned with a rose at his wedding, where she would have sat, and your daughter places her wedding bouquet on her headstone to make sure that her grandmother is still included in all of her celebrations and moments that would have been important to her. And the wedding ring that I saw my mother wear, that I wore after her death, and has now been handed down to my daughter, who wears it as her wedding ring, as a symbol of our family strength and connection to the woman we all loved. The impact is also about the inexpressible sense of embarrassment when you tell someone that your mother was murdered. It's almost as if you have a sense of guilt over injecting ugliness into their lives. It's also worrying you about your vulnerability in front of strangers and never knowing when a song or a conversation will trigger a memory. It's about any loud noise taking your breath away, constantly reminding you of the sound of Dean Waldemar's hammer banging the courtroom table 3 times, and you feel like in that very moment you were present when it all happened. And it is a sickening sense of never fully knowing, yet fearing that you know all too well what those moments must have been like her. We weren't the only ones to lose something that day, though. On the day my mother lost the opportunity to ever meet her youngest grandchild, and to see all of her grandchildren grow up to witness her grandchildren's graduations and various life accomplishments, their weddings and the births of her great-grandchildren. No longer would she be able to travel with her grandchildren, and she was no longer able to raise her beloved dogs. At 63, her life was undeniably cut short. While justice was slow in coming, and at times painfully unbearable, we believe that it has been served. As a family, we endure the anguish that you experienced when you watched the reenactment of your mother's murder throughout the trial, and in the media to make sure that she got the justice she deserved. We painstakingly listened to the testimony about how long she might have been conscious and thus aware of what was happening while she lay on her basement floor. And as a family, we obsessed over what her thoughts in those moments might have been. Even now, we can only hope that she thought about how much she was loved, how proud we were to call her our mother and grandmother. We also know that Paul Goodwin's actions ruined 2 families that day, not only ours, but his as well. And while nothing will ever bring my mother back, we believe that tonight justice was served for my mother, Joan. We also know that nothing will ever bring closure, and that we have had to accept living without answers to all of our questions about why this happened. But we hope that we can move forward as a family from the finality of tonight so that those happy memories can start coming back more frequently to replace the images, the flashbacks of the crime scene photos and hammer sounds. In closing, we know that she is still with us every day. She comforts us at night when the nightmares come. She makes the sun shine on rainy wedding days. She watches over the births of all her new family members, inevitably smiling to herself when another stubborn, strong-willed woman is born with just a little piece of her. We were all here tonight to not only ensure justice for her, but to also let her know that no matter what, her memory will never be lost or drowned out by this violence. She will always be more to us than just a victim. Thank you.